Hi, this is a tutorial series to teach you how to make your first game in Gamemaker in 3 simple steps. The goal is to introduce you to the Gamemaker software and its most basic functions so that after you finish these 3 steps, you can learn to make your own games, troubleshoot bugs, and find solutions all on your own. My name is Dr. Sky, and I'm a professor of digital media arts at the University of St. Thomas in St. Paul, Minnesota. This is step 3, and in this video, you will learn how to add a collision system, fade in and fade out transitions, and how to publish your game. We're going to learn one way to do collisions. Collisions in game design is when one object interacts with another object, usually to stop one object from moving. So imagine Tetris. A block is moving down in Tetris, and once it collides with another block, it stops moving. So we're going to make a system right now to make it so our terminal can't leave the screen. So right now we can control our terminal, but we can move it outside of our game, and we don't want that. We want to keep our game terminal inside. Now there's several different ways to do this, but I thought this was a good opportunity to teach y'all about collisions. So first, create a new sprite and call it s_border. Set its origin to middle center, and then under size, resize its canvas to be 20 pixels by 20 pixels. And then fill it in with some bright color. Here I chose yellow. So close s_border and create a new object. We're going to call this O_border. And select the correct sprite. Close that. Open r_game. Select the bottom layer and change the grid to 10 pixels by 10 pixels. And you can toggle your grid on and off here with the toggle grid button. And over here, there's a drop-down arrow called grid options. If you select that, you can change the grid to different values, and the grid will just allow you to snap different objects to certain positions in the game. Our border is 20 pixels by 20 pixels, and because we've set its origin to middle center, it'll snap to these little intersections. I don't know if you can actually see them. There we go. It'll snap to these little intersections. So we need to set it to half the width and half the height of our border object. So that will be 10 by 10. So once you've changed the grid width, or grid X and grid Y to 10 and 10, you can click out of that and make sure you have bottom layer selected still. And you can click the border object. Now you don't need to drag it in this time. You can just select it and make sure it's highlighted. And then you hold down the Alt or the Option key on your keyboard, and you can move your mouse around, and you can see that that instance is sort of hanging there. And if you click and hold your mouse button and drag, you can paint with instances of objects. Oh. Now, if I make a mistake, I can hold down the Shift key, click and drag to select an area of these instances, delete them, hit the Delete key on the keyboard, and then hold the Alt or Option key and just continue on painting these objects or these instances of objects around the room. There we go. Oh, I'm about to sneeze. This is embarrassing. Should I edit this out? No, I'm not sneezing. Okay, let's charge ahead. All right, now we need to write some code to make sure our terminal can't leave the room. So close this. And in the O terminal step event, delete X plus HSP and Y plus HSP for now. We're going to add those back in a moment. And we are going to write our collision code. This collision system might be a little difficult to understand right now, but hopefully I will explain it in a way that makes sense. So add a comment, horizontal collision. If place meeting X plus HSP. So this is saying, hey, don't check to see if we're already overlapping. Check to see if we're about to overlap in the next frame, because we're going to add that X plus equals HSP. So this is just saying, hey, if we add the horizontal speed value to our X position, will we overlap with our border object? So X plus HSP plus Y. Now for horizontal collision, we're just going to do X plus HSP, make Y just be Y. O underscore border. Double close parentheses, open curly brackets, close curly brackets. We're going to create a local variable called 1 pixel and make it equal sign of HSP. Now, sign is a function that checks if this value is positive, and if it's positive, it returns just a positive 1, just 1. If it's negative, it returns -1. So it just checks to see if this is positive or negative. So if our horizontal speed is positive 4, just 4, it'll come back with 1. And if it is -4, it'll come back with -1, and it's going to assign that 1 or -1 to this local variable called 1 pixel that we're going to use to move our terminal in the correct direction in a moment. While bang or exclamation point place meeting, so that's saying, hey, if we're not touching the border object at the following location, X plus 1 pixel. If we're not overlapping it, if we're still not overlapping, Y, O border, double close parentheses, open curly brackets, close curly brackets, we need to move the terminal over 1 pixel. So X plus equals 1 pixel. That should highlight yellow in a moment. There we go. So while loops are interesting. They're very valuable. What they do is that they check a statement or a condition. And if this condition is true, it runs this code over and over and over again, all in one frame. So it's easy to get stuck in while loops unless you have some system to get out. So this is a system to get out because this will keep moving our terminal over 1 pixel until it is touching but not overlapping our border object, because it's always adding 1 pixel to the right or to the left of our terminal. So it's always checking 1 pixel to the right or 1 pixel to the left to see if it's overlapping with the border, and it'll move us until we're touching the border, and then this will say, we'll check to see if it overlaps 1 pixel to the right or left, and then it will, so it'll stop running this code. So it'll get us out of the while loop. And while loops are like for loops. They happen instantly, all in a single frame. Even though it'll move this more than 1 pixel, this will move this 3 pixels or 4 pixels. It'll just do it immediately in the while loop. Now, once we have gotten our terminal object over to our border, we need to stop it. So we write HSP equals 0. And then after all that, we need to add the code to actually make the thing move. X plus equals HSP commit to movement. So this is only for collision, and we want our HSP to be 0, and so it'll just add 0 here, so not move it, if we're bordering or right next to the border. Now we need to do the same thing with vertical collision, but we can just do a lot of copying and pasting here. So I copy and paste it. We just got to change some things, change the comment to vertical. Under place meeting, instead of X plus HSP, we'll change that to Y plus VSP. var 1 pixel to be sign of VSP. Place meeting X plus 1 pixel, we'll change it to Y plus 1 pixel. Change this to Y, and change this to V, and change this to Y, and change this to VSP. This does the exact same thing vertically. To explain this in the room a little bit, let me open the game room. Let's open this terminal object, and I'm going to turn off the grid, and I'm going to get this terminal object really close to the border. So what happens is that as this is moving over, it's going to be always checking if the next frame, when we're going to be moving 4 pixels, because remember our move speed is 4. So it's about to move 4 pixels the next frame, but it's going to say, hey, in the next frame, when you move 4 pixels, will it accidentally overlap? If so, you need to not keep moving and instead just move 1 pixel during the while loop until we touch the border and then stop moving. Let me move this back to like the center. So let's run the game and see if it works. Yep. I can't move to the right or to the left. Can't leave the room on any side. Lovely. While loops are very useful to like execute a bunch of code over and over again, but all during one frame. All right, so let's now add some visual panache to the game. In our O border object, we got to add the following code, add a create event, and we're going to make it so it's no longer a yellow pixel. It's going to look a little cooler, so we got to do some code for that. Text equals string irandom underscore range 0, 9, close parentheses, semicolon. Irandom range is a cool function that takes the lower value here and the higher value here and it gives you a random number between whatever these two values are. So you can do like, if you want to do like a dice roll, it'd be irandom range 1 and 6, and it would just randomly select 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 and give you that number. Now it's I random range because I stands for integer. So integer is like a whole number, 1, 2, 3, 4, or even like negative numbers, like -1, -2, etc. Those are integers. Real numbers are like 0.2 or 5.162.8. Those are real numbers. And so to get a random real number, you just write random range. But I don't want to work with real numbers. I want to work with integer numbers here. So I write irandom range here. And what this is going to do is going to take this number, turn it into a string. So it'll actually look like this when it gets its number, right? Turns it into a string we can display on the screen. And what this is going to do is when we're finished writing this code, it's going to change the border object from being yellow blocks to these numbers that are going to be changing every few frames. To do that, we're going to use an alarm, bracket, 0, close bracket, equals irandom range, 30 to 120 frames of the game. And in the step event, we just got to make it so it repeats this alarm. Oh, if alarm 0 double equals -1, meaning the alarm is off. Alarm 0 equals same thing, irandom range 30 to 120. Exact same thing as the create event. And then in the alarm 0 event, you can change the text to a different number. Text equals string irandom range 0 to 9, double close parentheses. And so this will just do the thing in the create event, but it'll just repeat it every time the alarm goes off and the alarm will reset. But at this point, we can't see any of this happening because we haven't done anything in the draw event. So let's do that. Go to the draw event and write draw set font to F instruct, which is the one font we have thus far. Draw set H align FA center. Draw set V align FA middle. Draw set color to be C aqua. And draw text X, Y, that text string that we have. And this will draw the number. So if we run our game, you'll see all of our border objects are now these numbers that randomly change every 30 to 120 frames of the game. Now, it's important that you learn that whenever you add code in the draw event with an object that has a sprite, it replaces the sprite with whatever you write in the draw event. Now, if you still want the sprite to appear, you can write the function draw self. doing that, you would see the yellow blocks and whatever is in this draw. You can see it's sort of yellow background. You can barely see the aqua colored numbers too. And it draws that sprite in whatever order you place it. So if I put draw self at the end, it'll draw it on top of whatever gets written before in the draw event. So here, the numbers are still being drawn, but they're being drawn underneath the yellow blocks, and so you can't see them anymore. So I'm going to remove just draw self because we don't want them anymore. The only reason I have a yellow sprite here is so that in the room editor, I can see where the border is. But when I actually play the game, I don't want to have to see that border. I want to see those cool numbers acting as our border. You could also put that border outside of the game, here, out here, and so the terminal would be able to go all the way to the edge of the game screen but still not move. But I think it just kind of looks cool to have those numbers on the screen, so let's leave it. All right, so you've learned about how to paint objects in rooms using the Alt or the Option key, while loops, the sign function, and the draw self function. Now let's add some polish to the game with the title screen and a game over screen. First, let's add some narrative stuff. Let's change the instruction text. Let's change the first set of instructions to be something cool with an open curly bracket as part of the text because it makes it look like it's from a computer. Use the arrow keys to move and delete viruses. Close curly bracket. Delete. Well, let's add the curly bracket. Looks cool. Delete the viruses before they enter the server. It's important to note that these curly brackets aren't doing anything in terms of code because they're part of a string. They're just being drawn on the game as a string. It just looks cool to add them here, I think. All right, let's give it a look. All right, use the arrow keys to move and delete viruses. Delete the viruses before they enter the server. So now we're getting to have like a little narrative to the game, which is fun. Next, let's make a title screen. Open your title room. Click the background layer. Here where it says no sprite, click that, go to sprites. We're going to use the same background as our game. We're going to click that, and just like our game, we're going to check vertical tile. And under vertical speed, we're going to write 0.5 to make it scroll on the screen. Now we're going to go to the creation code under room properties, and we're going to delete where it says room go to our game, because we're going to create a system so the players have to click on the title to start the game. And to have our title in our title room, let's go to fonts and create a new font. Font. There we go. Call this F_title. I'm going to do the same font as before, which is on Windows Consolas. Consolas, where are you? Change the size to 40 and the style to bold. If you're using a Mac, you can choose Menlo, which is a great font, also kind of a console font. And we have a new font. And create a new object. There we go. And call it O_title. And this is going to be our title in our title room. In the create event, we're going to give it a location. X equals 300. You can also move it around in the room itself, but this is a good way to make sure it's in the middle. You could also write room width divided by 2, I guess, if you want it in the middle, but we know our game is 300 pixels wide, so we can just write 300. Y equals 75, which means it's a little bit up from the top. 75 pixels from the top. Yep. And then add a draw event and write black bar. It's going to be sort of a black bar behind the title. Make it look cool. It's stylized. Draw set color C_black. Semicolon. Draw rectangle 062 is the top left corner coordinates and 688 is the bottom right hand corner coordinates, and we want it to be filled in, so we're going to write false or 0 there. And then title of the game, draw set font F title, our new title font, draw set H align, FA center, draw set V align, FA middle, draw set color, see aqua, draw text X, Y, virus, hack, virus.hack, open and close parentheses. Make it look like a function. And, oh, and semicolon. Again, we're going for like a computer programming feel of the game. Is that good? Did I do something wrong? There's a, oh. Draw it. No, it's all good. Okay. And then let's add another black bar. I'm going to just copy this, paste it down here. Just going to change the coordinates to 0, 400, 600, and 450. We also want it filled in, so we'll write false. How to start the game, change the font. Everything like the H line and V line can be the same, but we're just going to change the font. So we're going to write draw set font F instruct this time. Draw set color C aqua. Draw text 300, 425, middle of the room, but lower in the room also, comma, in the text, mouse, click to initiate. Did I do everything right here? Let's see, yep. So we have this drawing the title of the game, but we say mouse click to initiate here. First, let's get it into the room. Let's open our title room and drag O_title into the room to see how it looks like, just to always be checking what we're doing. So you can see how it looks like. It says mouse click to initiate, but nothing happens when I click, so I got to add that into the code. So let's create a step event. And we'll write if mouse button, mouse check button pressed, MB any, double close parentheses, open curly brackets, close curly brackets, room, go to R_game. So mouse check button pressed is one of the many ways we can get inputs from the mouse. What this one does is it checks to see if the mouse button has been pressed, not that it's being held down, but a single mouse press. And you can say which mouse button to check. You can write MB left, MB right. There's a few others you can check. If you click with your mouse scroll wheel right there, you can open up your Gamemaker manual and read what other things you can put in there. But I put mouse button any, so any mouse button when clicked will take us to the game. And now we've already moved it over, so we can run our game and click, and it'll take us to our game. Last thing, let's open our title room, and let's just add a smattering of these border objects to the room. Just give it some extra visual panache, something more to look at. And under instant layer properties, I'm going to scroll up and I'm going to make sure that this O title object, I'm just clicking, I'm going to drag that all the way to the bottom because, oh, it didn't work. Let's do it again. All the way to the bottom because for some reason in instance layer properties, whatever object is created after gets put on the bottom, and whatever is created on the bottom or after gets put on top of everything else. It's counterintuitive because it's not how the layer system works. But adding that will add us a bunch of little random numbers floating around in there. That looks pretty good. Close out of that. Next, let's open our game room, and in the creation code, let's make it so we no longer see our mouse in the game room because we don't need to. We're using the arrow keys to move our terminal around. So we can use a cool little function for that called window set cursor CR none. This changes what the cursor looks like. So right now my cursor is like the little text select cursor, but if I move it over here, it's just the arrow, typical arrow, the default. If you click this with your middle mouse scroll wheel, you can open your game manual and see the other things you can put. Another cool thing in Gamemaker is you can create a sprite and assign a sprite to your mouse button and have a sort of a set of custom cursors, which is kind of fun. Now in our game, we don't need to see our cursor anymore. So now when we get to the game room, we won't see the mouse. So here we see the mouse because we need to see it to click to initiate. We're going to click, get to the game, we no longer see our mouse. Now the mouse is still there. If I move the mouse outside of the game screen, it appears again, but when it's in the game screen, we no longer see it. All right, now we're going to go to our title room in the creation code and change the code to show mouse, window, set, cursor, CR default. So whatever the default mouse is on whatever machine you're playing on, it'll make sure the mouse is showing in the title room. And this is important in case we add a game restart system that takes us back to the title. We'll be able to see our mouse again. And everything should be working there. And yeah, for the game over screen, let's create a room, a new room, call it r/game over. Change the width and height of this room to be the same as the other room, 600 by 600. In the room's creation code, we're going to stop the music. If audio is playing, SMD music, double closed parentheses, open curly bracket, closed curly bracket, audio, stop, sound, SMD music. And this will stop music during game over. And also, we want to be able to see our mouse cursor again in the game over room. So we're going to write window, set, cursor, CR default. Let's go to the block object and make it so when our blocks leave the screen, the game doesn't restart, but instead it takes us to the game over room. So you just write room, go to r_game over. Let's run the game, see if it works. Click, go to the game, no mouse, can't see the mouse anymore, which is good, what we want. Viruses leave the screen, it takes us to a game over screen, and we can see the mouse again. Beautiful. Create a new object, call it O_restart. This is going to be our system in the game over screen to restart the game and keep playing the game. And add a create event and give it a location, x equals 300, y equals 250. Again, we can position this in the room itself. Also do it here in the creation code, which is in the middle horizontally and a little bit leaning towards the top half of the screen vertically, and add a draw event. And write game over text, and you know the drill, people. Draw, set, font, F instruct, draw, set, color, C aqua, draw, set, H align, FA middle, no, FA center. Center is for horizontal. Draw, set, V align, FA middle. Draw text, XY, open quote, viruses have infected the server, close quote, close all that, draw text, X, we want it horizontally the same, but we want this to be a little lower, so we'll do Y plus 50. Viruses destroyed, colon, space, close quotes, plus sign, and we're going to add something onto the string with the string function, string global dot points, close bracket, close parentheses, semicolon. And what this plus sign does is that you're allowed to add strings together. So you can have text equals string part 1, close, plus string part 2. And you can add parts of a string together, so it forms just like one sentence. And by adding a space here right in this part of the string. It means that when we show the game points, it won't be right next to the colon, but it'll be one space away. You could even just do this, like get rid of that space, have a plus sign, then have open quotes, space, close quotes. And I'll do the exact same thing because spaces are part of a string. But we can do that just right over here. Viruses destroyed, colon, space, close quotes, plus create a string out of our points and add it to that text. One more line, draw text x, y plus 100 this time, so 50 more pixels down below. Open quote, click anywhere to restart. Close quote, close parentheses, semicolon. And in the step event, let's make it so when we click anywhere, it actually restarts, right? If mouse button, mouse check button pressed, MB any, global.points equals 0. So let's reset these global variables. Global.block speed equals 2, which is what it starts with at the beginning of the game. Then room, you go to our game. So this lets us click anywhere in the game over screen and lets us restart the game. But our restart object isn't in the game over room yet. So let's open our game over room and drag restart into the room. See if that's working. We've done a lot. We should check to see if the game is working. Okay, so it should take us to the new room. Viruses have infected the server. Viruses destroyed 2. Click anywhere to restart. Click. Restarts. Notice that the music did not restart because we set the music to play in the title room, but not in the game room. So all we have to do is go to our game, creation code, and write play music. We can't just write audio, play, sound, yada, 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 because after the music is playing from the title, that music would be going. And then when we got to the game, another instance of that music would start playing. And so we'd have two versions of that music playing over itself. It'd be cacophonous. It'd be terrible. So we do a little check to see if music's already playing. If it's already playing, we don't play it. We don't do anything. But if it's not playing, we start the music. Add a bang there or not. So if audio is not playing, audio is playing, little exclamation point, very powerful, to check if something is not true. SND music, double close parentheses, audio, play, sound, SND music. Priority of 1. We want it to loop, so set that to true. And that disappeared. Very good. So that should fix the music issue. Click. Our game is going. Our virus is going to leave the screen. We see our mouse. We're in the game over room. No music. We click here. Music restarts. Beautiful. Now, if you want to see what happens if we didn't add this little if statement. So let's just add a bunch of comment lines so it just plays music here. It means we're going to get music from our title room, and when we click, we're going to have 2 versions of the music playing. Sounds terrible. So let's put that back. So you've learned about so here you've learned about mouse check button pressed, that function. You've learned about MB any, MB left, MB right. You've learned about window set cursor, learned about the CR none cursor, the CR default cursor, and then also how to add strings together using the plus sign. And the last piece of polish we're going to be adding is fade out and fade in transitions. So first, in all of your rooms, starting with our game, create a new layer at the top of the layers, rename it to fade, capital F, fade. make sure it's as an instance layer, it's at the very top because we want our fade in and fade out transitions to be on top of everything else. Fade, title, fade. Create a new object. Call it O_fade. You guessed it. Now we're going to code this object, and it's going to just act as a default. It's going to act as a fade in. So when we enter a new room, we get a nice sort of like, it starts all black and then it sort of slowly disappears and it reveals the room that we're in. And then we can we're going to code in a way to turn it into a fade out so it works the opposite way if we like, and it will transition us to a different room. So let's declare some variables. Fade out equals false. Comment false means a fade in. True means a fade out. A equals 1. Start completely black unless otherwise instructed. Target underscore room equals no one. Which room are we going to after a fade out? So no one is like declaring a variable which is looking for an asset in Gamemaker, like an object or music or something like that. We just want to declare the variable, but we don't want to assign it anything yet. Like we could call this like target room or game, right? But instead we're just going to say no one. So no one is a way to refer to an asset in the game, but sort of make it blank. Same with like a new string. So we can say text equals, and we just put 2 empty quotation marks with nothing in it. It's a way of creating a string variable, but not giving it any sort of value yet, but making the variable, declaring the variable. So in a step event, we're going to write a bunch of code. We're going to go through this pretty quickly, but this is essentially going to be an if statement, and if fade out is true, it's going to be like do a fade out and change rooms. And then we're going to do an else, which will mean do a fade in. Do a fade in. Yep, that's it. Nothing else to it. So first, in the fade out section of the code, if A, which is going to be, A equals 1. Yep, that's going to be our alpha value. We did something similar with the instructions, right, in a previous video. If A is less than 1, if A is less than 1, say like A is 0, make it so it's more and more visible. So A plus equals 0.01. So increase it by 1% visibility every frame of the game. Else, meaning if A has gotten to 1 or is greater than 1, just set it to 1 in case it just accidentally goes above 1. And then room, go to target room, whatever we set the target room to be. And you'll see how we set the target room in a second. But instead, this is sort of the default. This is the default. So I'll just write a little comment there. We'll write if A is greater than 0, A minus equals 0.05. So if the screen is all black, we want to slowly make it less and less visible until it's completely transparent and we can see the room underneath. Else, very similar thing over here. After it gets to 0 or is less than 0, just set it to 0 and then instance destroy. Instance destroy. Did I write that wrong? That's right. Instance destroy. There we go. And we need to do that because we don't want to have just invisible objects hanging around in the game. Now, this is messing around with an alpha value here, but it's just in the form of a variable we've called A. So let's do something with that here in the draw event. Draw set color We want the color of our fade in and fade out color to be black. Draw set alpha to be just that A variable, whatever it is. Draw a rectangle, 0, 0, the top left corner of the room. Room width and room height. This is great because if you end up changing the width or height of your rooms, this will just cover everything. And we want it to be filled in, so we write false instead of just being an outline. And then if anytime you're messing with the alpha value in draw event, always end your draw event with draw set alpha to 1, or else everything else in your game is going to be invisible. Right, so now whenever we want to fade and go to another room, we just have to create this object, oFade, and then give it some information. So let's go to the oTitle object, which is this thing in the title room, and change the step event. So instead of when you just click and it just immediately takes you to the game, let's delete this and have it create the fade object. And the fade object is what's going to take us to the next room. We'll write if an instance doesn't exist, so we write that bang at the beginning. Instance exists, so if the following instance does not exist, fade. We do this because we only want one instance of the fade object to appear, not a bunch. And this is a step event, so it'll create a new object every frame unless we create some parameters here to make sure it just checks, hey, has this been created yet? No, create it. And after it's created, it won't do it again. Var fade, create a local variable called fade. Instance create layer x, y in the fade layer, fade. With this new instance, with fade, instructions for a fade out. Fade out equals true. A equals 0. Target room equals our game. Wait a second, see if this recognizes it as a temporary variable, which it does, a local variable. And yeah, I already explained why we have this bang here. We just want to make sure that it only does something once. It's the same thing with like checking if music is playing, right? We only want to have the instruction happen once, and after the instruction has happened, don't do it anymore. Right, this is in the title, so this should give us a nice fade out transition to the game. So let's click here, fade out, took us to the game. It's working. In the creation code of our game room, creation code, we can add a little fade in transition. You can just simply add instance create layer x, y in the fade layer, fade. Now everything in the fade object is already set to be a fade in, so you don't have to add any extra information here. It'll automatically destroy itself too. And since this is the creation code of the room, it only runs precisely once, so it won't create a bunch of instances of the fade in transition. Click here, so once we get to the game, nice little quick fade in there. I don't know if you saw it. It's nice. Let's finish adding in the fades. So in the block step event, instead of room go to, we will go to the game over screen. Now you can copy and paste this from the other place where you put it. So to speed things up, I'm just going to copy and paste it in here, except you're going to want to change the target room to game over instead of our game. Beautiful. So when one of those viruses leaves the room, it should fade out and take us to the game over screen. Let's see. Beautiful. We got a nice slow fade out. Now in the restart step event, replace this with, you guessed it, with that fade out code. Oh. Let me just make sure everything is properly indented. I like properly indented block of code, except we're going to change this from our game over to our game. And let's test it out. Fade out, fade in. We're going to let a virus go to the end of the room. Fade out. Game over screen. We're going to click and it should do a fade out, fade in. Everything is beautiful. So you've learned about no one, and you've learned about instance exists function, and also adding the bang before it to check if an instance doesn't exist. That's our game. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to learn how to publish this game. And there's different ways to publish it. With the free version of Gamemaker, you can only publish to a special gaming web browser called Opera GX, which is kind of lame, I think, because to get like friends, family, people online to play it, they have to download a special browser that no one really uses. It's not the best way. So instead, let's look at your options. I'm going to drag this over. So here on the Gamemaker website, you see different licenses. The free version, again, you can only do an export to this special browser. It's kind of lame. It's hard to share it with people. Now, if you just want to create a game, export it on Windows, have a file people can download from your website, they can play it on their Windows computers, you can just buy a creator license for 1 month and then just cancel your subscription before the month ends and be able to export your game to Windows. If you want to do an HTML5 game or a web browser game, which is what I do, so people can just play it in their web browsers, you can just send them a link in an email or a social media post and they can just go to a quick web page and just play your game, which I think is the best way to do it. Just for these quick little indie games, you would need to buy an indie license for a month and then cancel your subscription after you publish your game. The only thing is, if you're doing a web game, a web browser game, HTML5 game it's called, when you're developing the game, you want to be always exporting your game and uploading it on a website and seeing how it's running, because things run a little more janky as HTML5 games. And so whenever you do anything, if you're when you're developing a web browser game, you want to check to see if it runs by uploading it online. Now, there's some tools to very easily do that. Before I show you how to do that, let me just quickly show you how to export it as a Windows file. So you just go to here to Game Options. Oh, before you do that, excuse me. In the top right-hand corner, you're going to see your target build. If you hover over Mac or Windows here, it says current target build. If you click that, you can change your target build to something else. So if you're just exporting it to Windows, click Windows. And then under Game Options, we want to, under Platform Settings, click Windows. And then change the display name to something that you can deal with. I just changed mine to my website name, so it doesn't say created with Gamemaker, which is really derpy. Under Images, under Icon, you don't want to use the Gamemaker icon. Again, it's really derpy. You can create your own icon in an image editor, and it's kind of a little tricky if you don't know how to do it, but you can look online on how to create icon files. Icon files are essentially an image at a bunch of different sizes, so that when you see an icon on a computer that's really small, it does the right image. See it really big. I've created an icon and already set it to that. It's in my files. Now, unfortunately, the icon file that I created is not good for like 4K monitors, and I'm using a 4K monitor right now. So if your icon file does not have the right size of image, Gamemaker will just use its own icon. So if you're exporting a Windows game, make sure that you have a properly made icon file for your game. And also under Windows here, you'll notice under Images, I don't have Use Splash Screen selected. I believe under Mac exports, you have to use a splash screen, so you'll probably want to create an image and upload it to be your new splash screen. But basically, it's very simple. To export a Windows game, you click Create Executable up here. If you click Package as an installer file, it'll give you one executable file that people can download and double-click on and install the game on their computer as a piece of software. Now, this is iffy because on Windows, Windows will think that a player has downloaded a virus because you are not a trusted developer. You don't have a certificate that Windows can check to make sure that you're a trusted supplier of software. And so it'll give you a warning on Windows before you install. And that will scare some people away from playing the game. Same with packaging it as a zip. But it's a little easier if you're having people download it from a website. Just let them know that it's a safe file and that they can ignore those prompts and they can still play your game. Just to show you what I'm talking about, just show you how to export it, just click Package as Zip. Make sure you save it on your computer someplace where you can find it. So I click Desktop. I'm going to click Save. Give it a second to do its magic. And now on my desktop, I have this zipped file that I can extract. And you can see I have my little icon there, but if I move it to big icons, oh, it actually works. If I move it a little bigger, will it change? No, it actually works. Oh, nice. Double click on that, and you get your little game. Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Now, more interesting though, is to export your game as a HTML5 game or a web game. So I'm going to click HTML5. Now, when you're doing test builds of your game, just use the desktop, a Windows or Mac, to do your test builds when you're just clicking run. Don't do test builds as HTML5. Instead, to do a test build as HTML5, export your game. So select HTML5, export it. Now, before we do that, let's go to Game Settings, Platform Settings, HTML5. Again, change your browser title, which will be like the title that'll appear in the browser tab, something that you can stand. Display cursor, sure. Images, you can change the icon that appears, it's the little icon in the tab too. Splash screen, social, analytics, you have some options there you can check out. HTML5 is here under current target build. We're going to create executable, and we're just going to package it as a zip file on the desktop. I minimize this, and there's this great tool. There's several tools like this online. This is called Netlify, and it's a great way to just very quickly do test builds of HTML5 web browser games. If you don't log in, it'll allow you just to see what your game looks like, and it'll delete that web page after an hour, so you don't have to manage it or anything. So here I have this zipped file of my HTML5 game. I'm going to drag it over here, drop it. It's going to upload. I have a web blocker turned on, so that was an issue before, so I'm going to try that again. Okay, so never mind, I need to log in. Fine. Fine, I'll log in. There we go. Okay. And it's going to take a second to deploy your website, and it's going to give you a randomly assigned URL. If you click that, you get your game. Now, this is what I'm talking about regarding uploading test builds of your game often to see if they're working. You'll notice there's no music playing. That's because in web browser games, they don't initiate audio oftentimes until you click somewhere on the web page. But here, if I click somewhere on the web page, it takes us to our next game. Now, after it gets there, it starts playing the music and everything's fine, everything works just fine. But that's why on my personal web games I've made, like this web game here, I have a little splash page that says click here to begin before the title room that allows you to click in the game so you get music going and everything is right. Same with like this game over here, I did the same thing. Click to begin, doesn't start any of the music until you actually click on things. So you got to mess around with that, and after you log in here, you should delete this, and there's ways to delete it, but that's just a quick way to deploy things and do test builds of your game on tools like netlify.com. And also, if you log into Netlify, you can change the domain name to something that people say, change site name. So instead of something randomly assigned, you can call it virushack.netlify.net. Gives you some options there. Poke around with that, figure out how to publish your game, and that's your first game. Now, it's a little janky, it's a little quick, but it should have introduced you to some of the basic functionality of Gamemaker and how to get your games out there, and hopefully you learn how to troubleshoot issues by yourself, and you're going to encounter issues. You're going to find things you need to fix, and it's going to be hard and it's going to be difficult, but slowly you're going to develop those skills and learn how to use this software, and it's much more powerful than what I've demonstrated here. This is very simple. And I encourage you to go seek out other tutorials where you can learn how to do some really, really awesome things in this software. So good luck, get out there, start making games.